Lin Xiaoming curled up in his small apartment. Outside the window was the murmurs of urban nights, and neon lights came in, reflecting his tired face. In the room, the only light source came from the swaying light on the table. It cast a warm yellow light, illuminating the bowl of lonely overnight noodles. He was 28 years old, with marks of social animals engraved on his face, and his loose household clothes were wrapped in thin body, which made people see his fatigue all day long. He stared at the bowl of noodles, and the fork moved in his hand, as if it was worth chewing a few more bites. He finally picked up the fork and tore the crisp cracks of the puff paste bag blue in the quiet air, and a sour fragrance came over his nose, mixing the old smell in the kitchen. He rolled up a bunch of noodles listlessly and put it into his mouth, chewing slowly and mechanically, like a routine. The refrigerator buzzes in a low voice on the background, accompanied by the air-conditioned light and soft voice, creating a neutral dullness that makes people feel the static of time. Just as he was chewing the noodles, a sudden flash of light broke through the darkness, accompanied by a strange buzzing sound, as if something was vibrating in his ears. His body suddenly became light and a difficult-to-describe floating feeling rose from the bottom of his feet. He looked down, his arms and body gradually fading away, as if he had merged into the shadows around him. The air conditioning in the room became particularly clear, making his skin slightly flutter, his heartbeat involuntarily accelerated, and his pupils instantly magnified. He stood up suddenly, his excited mood swept like a tide, paced back and forth in the small room. The sound of his footsteps quietly disappeared, leaving only the occasional slight creaking of the floor, as if he had become a ghost. He reached out his hand to touch the table, his fingers easily penetrated through the wooden surface, and a funny spring-jumping sound was rumbling in the sea of brain, making all this absurd and dreamy. Lin Xiaoming couldn't help laughing, and a shaking sound was scattered in his laughter. "It's so incredible," he said to himself, his voice carrying a naive heat. "Is this a lie? I, Lin Xiaoming, can finally show off my skills like a comic hero, no longer a fearful social animal." He imagined himself becoming a hero who saved the world. His pace became light and fast, and accidentally kicked a chair while turning around. The air in the room seemed to mock him, and the light feeling made him forget it. He continued to test, grabbing the cup on the table, slid his hands over the invisible, and the cartoon sound effects on the background echoed around his ears, like a funny game. But soon, an embarrassing emotion climbed into my heart like a shadow. He recalled the mediocre life, everyday commutes, boring meetings in the office, those invisible pressures, and his body suddenly sank. The rapid sound of his air rose like a whip, and his arms and body reappeared. He retreated in panic and ran into the bookshelf beside him. The book fell like a rain, and the sound of thumping in the room, the rustling sound of paper rubbing like mocking him. He covered his head and fell to the ground, and the light flashed, illuminating the group. Lin Xiaoming lay on the ground, gasping for heavy and rapid, and his chest was undulating as if he wanted to spit out all the trouble. The TV turned on automatically for some reason, and clear sounds came from the screen, reporting strange events in the city. There was no sign of the figure, and the eyewitness saw the strange phenomenon. The reverberation reverberated in the room, creating a suspicious atmosphere, which made him unable to help but silence. "Wait, what if someone finds it?" he said softly. His voice was low, his eyes were full of conflicts in his heart. "As soon as I suddenly appear and messed up everything, my tiny personality will definitely destroy everything." He tried to silence himself, rubbing the painful head, and making a self-deprecating smile. I am the worst superpower in history. I wanted to use it to save the world, but even the tests hit the wall. However, I may be able to use it to secretly listen to company gossip and kill it." The chaos in the room gradually subsided, leaving only the sound of TV news to continue to revolve, reporting more strange events, like the undercurrent of the city being quietly approaching. Lin Xiaoming was lying on the floor, and the urban lights outside the window penetrated through the gaps of the window. A little light shone like a shaped call, implying that a larger storm was coming. Lin Xiaoming stood up from the floor, with a sudden breath still on his chest, and the neon lights outside the window were urging him. The sound of TV news continued to whisper the strange things in the city. He turned off the screen and fell into tranquility in the room, leaving only the blurred sound of the far-flung vehicle flow. He took a deep breath and felt the chaos in his chest gradually calm down, then walked towards the desk in the corner of the room. When the pull-out opened, a slight scratch sound came out, and he took out a yellow map and a notebook. The paper rustled at the fingertips, and Lin Xiaoming leaned over to draw the route diagram under the light, and the tip of the pen drew a tortuous line on the paper. His eyes flashed with a fantasy, and his fingers hit the tabletop as if he was knocking on the rhythm of the future. Outside the window, the noise of the city was coming like a tide, and the low roar of the car engine interacted with the voices of people, creating a tight spot that was about to explode. Today I want to sneak into the bank like a hero in the movie, and make a big fuss. He murmured, his voice squirting and fear squirting, his lips slightly sniffing, and he quickly pursed. But, what should I do when I get caught? As the words fell, his palm paused on the table for a moment, and his palms were sweating slightly, reminding him of his inner timidity. A familiar buzzing gush rose from the body, like a slight current traveling under the skin. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. His body began to become light, with a transparent feeling like a thin fog. The wooden boards on the stairs creaked under his feet, and he walked down the apartment door with his hands in his arms, and the light turning of the door was almost swallowed up in the quietness of the night. The lights on the street stretched out his shadow, and it quickly blurred, as if he had turned into a wind. The door of the bank's large hall sniffed crisply, and he slid into the door. The air inside was filled with the bitter aroma of coffee and the humming sound of customers. His heartbeat was as rapid as a drum, and he approached the wall and moved towards the golden warehouse. The metal lock sound came from the front, accompanied by the police's conversation, and the words calmed down his spine. "Oh my God, it's so scary here. I don't want to be a hero, just go home and listen to gossip." He lowered his voice, said to himself, and stepped back involuntarily. A hurried air flowed over and his body suddenly returned to the body, and the obscene slipped away like a skinny child. The glass display cabinet shattered slightly under his panic collision, and the small cracks spread like spider nets. The beheads on the street sounded sharply, and the pedestrians slapped the ground like rain. He rushed out of the bank and dribbled into the night. The cold wind blew over his face, causing him to realize his roomang. Back at the company office, he chose a safer goal and penetrated into the gaps between colleagues. The click sound of the keyboard and the ticking sound of the coffee machine form a background chapter, and his obscene figure easily slides over the partition. The conversation between colleague A and colleague B came from the front. "Did you hear it? Someone can fly with farts, it's just urban saying." Colleague A's voice was joking, and the chair squeaked on the floor. Colleague B laughed. "Ha, then I'll try it next time. I'm going to escape from this ghost company." Lin Xiaoming originally wanted to remain calm, but his heart began to move. He bit his lower lip and held back his smile, and finally couldn't help laughing lightly. The sound was like a drop of water falling into the tranquil lake, and the ripples spread out. Invisible art, his figure vaguely appears, and the phone call sound in the office and the smiles of colleagues are aggravated. The door was pushed open and the boss walked in. "What kind of ghost is this? Is the company a ghost? Let me show it." His voice lit up like a whip, causing a chair to fall to the ground and the screams of his colleagues. In a mess, Lin Xiaoming re-embarrassed in panic, and his footsteps on the floor quickly flew away, as if he was escaping from a dream. He hid in the corner of the meeting room, his chest fluctuated unsteady, and the ticking of raindrops hitting the glass outside the window as slow as his heartbeat. The pleats on the clothes were fixed under his fingers, unable to cover up the inner movements. "It's over. I'm not a hero, I'm a joke. My friends will definitely look down on me even more in the future," he whispered, with a bitter taste in his self-deprecating spirit. His eyes were blushing, staring at the flash of the lights outside the window. In the night, he slipped away from the company, his figure as blurred as a smoke. Far away, the lowly verbal confusion of the neighborhood came, like the undercurrent of the city whispering, laying seeds for the future storm. The street lights stretched out his loneliness, leaving no chance. Lin Xiaoming walked along the dim yellow light on the street. The night was as thin as a layer of thin wavy wrapping the hustle and bustle of the city, and his mind was still stuck in the previous wolf. The shadow stretched and shortened, as if mocking his loneliness. He maintained his invisible state, walked towards the frontier building with a light and rapid movement. The far-off car stream buzzed like a humble tide, reminding him of the ruthlessness of this city. He pushed open the door of the main building, and the door locked and clicked lightly, and the sound reverberated in the narrow staircase. He deliberately lowered his feet, and the shattered rustling almost merged into the surrounding tranquility, and his shaped body slid over the ladder, and every step seemed to be challenging the air. There was a faint musty smell in the air, mixed with the dust in the building, making his nose wings twitch slightly, and he didn't dare to think too much. When he arrived outside his home in the town, he stopped and looked through the door to the room. The house in the room was in full swing, and the sound of the cards raised by the plaques was like a drum beat, accompanied by the laughter of the neighbors. Zheng Jue's voice was loud and cheerful, like a fire that was ready to explode at any time, while Zheng Jubi's comments fell like a rain. Lin Xiaoming stood with breath, his heartbeat accelerated under the obscure outer shell, and his slightly erect hands clamped into fists. He thought, this might be an opportunity, making him feel less helpless. Wow, this is such a big card. I'm going to secretly help find the remote control. I feel like a hidden hero, and I'm finally not so lonely. He spoke lightly, with sparks of excitement in his language, so he was careful to lower his pressure, for fear of ejaculation. The moment I slipped into the room, the wood boards on the floor crunched lightly, like a warning. He lowered his waist, groped under the sand, and acted clumsy and cautiously, his fingers wandering between the fabric and the dust. In the air, the boiling sound of hot tea rose up, and the pungent smell of smoke was stimulating his smell, making the scene more absurd and interesting. The remote control was finally in touch, so he grabbed it, stood up quietly, and tried to put the picture back into the tea table. The tight emotions surged like a tide, his breathing became sluggish, and every movement was like a steel wire. Just as he put the remote control down, a squirm started from his nasal cavity. He instinctively wanted to suppress it, but it was too late. Ah, snee! The sneeze burst out, and the sound was as sharp as an explosion of bubbles. The obscurity effect instantly failed. His figure appeared under the light, and the wolf was so ugly that it was still stained with a dusty dust on his clothes. The room is blown up and opened. Zheng Jue's eyes widened, screaming like a sharp arrow breaking through the air. Oh my God! It's a ghost! Look, that shadow suddenly appears, and we are cursed in the game. Her voice trembled, and with the harsh noise of the chair scraping the floor, people fled in all directions. The table was knocked over, and the cards were scattered all over the ground, making dense thunder sounds, like a sudden rainstorm. Zheng Jubi half kneeled on the sand, his eyes flashing with curious fire. Wait, I heard that someone can yawn for 5 seconds. Is this difficult ability? We have to call the police, this city is too strange. His words were like stones throwing into the pond, ripples spreading, causing more panic. Lin Xiaoming stood in awkwardly, holding the remote control in his hand, and was rushing on his face. He tried to explain the picture and accidentally kicked the teacup over. The crisp crack sound was particularly harsh in the chaos. No, I'm just passing by. Wait, I'm not a ghost, I'm Lin Xiaoming. Please don't call me, I just want to help. His words continued, with a panic in the tutoring, his eyes wandering around, trying to capture any comprehension. The debris on the floor reflected lights, flashing to the mocking highlights. Zheng Jusi leaned against the door, his chest undulating, and he couldn't help laughing. Haha, you, a waste superpower, came to see my yen still appear, which made us think it was a city monster. Go back and continue to be your otaku. His whip was like a whip. Lin Xiaoming's shoulders sank slightly, the corners of his mouth twitched, and he didn't say anything back. The air was filled with breathing in rapid pace, and everyone seemed to be performing a ridiculous drama. His heart was beating like a drum, reminding himself of his stupidity. The chaos continued. Someone pushed the chair open, making a squeaking sound, and another hit the wall, causing a slight collision. Lin Xiaoming glanced at the door and thought of running away in the sea of brain. He turned the door handle, and the squeaking sound was like a farewell echo, and the Emperor rushed towards the stairs. The noise behind them was chasing like a tide, and the shouts of the neighbors gradually turned into vague low words. Is it a ghost? Or that invisible pervert? Their panic has turned into new news in the city. After stumbled out of the building, Lin Xiaoming took a deep breath and his shaped state once again covered him. The cold wind on the street blew over the face, bringing a refreshing feeling that it could not erase the bitterness in my heart. He leaned under the lights to breathe, and the noise of the remote neighborhood faded away, leaving only the buzzing car of the city as murmur. The light pulled away from his figure and merged into the night. A lonely rest whirled in my heart, implying that this small episode might cause a bigger wave. In the darkness, he disappeared slowly, like a wind, leaving no chance. Lin Xiaoming stood up from under the road lights, and the night was blowing like ink. He took a deep breath of the cold wind and squeezed the palpitations in his chest. The noise of the street faded away, leaving only the low whisper of the far climbing car, like the breath of the city. He glanced at the direction of the building, and the urge in his heart surged again. The target of this lock was the lights of the convenience store. The fragrance of the noodles in it looked like a ghost that seduced him forward. The obscurity state was still rotating inside the body, and he decided to release it once to make curiosity lead. He walked along the sidewalk, his steps slipping down like autumn leaves, and the night wind blew over, bringing a biting chill that could not contain the flames in his heart. The street lights stretched out his shadow, twisted and dissipated at the moment, and his heartbeat was like a secret drum, gradually accelerating. Turning over the street corner, the neon signs of the convenience store are reflected in their eyes, and the lights behind the glass doors are warm and inviting. He stopped, took a deep breath, and felt the energy of his body condensing at his fingertips, and his body gradually became transparent, like a smoke melting into the night. The door slammed up crisply, and he slipped into the store, and the familiar fragrance in the air came over his face, as if in a whisper, inviting him to approach. The store was empty, with shelves standing in front of the store, and the lights fell softly. He walked through the streets with his hands and feet. The noodles area was right in front of the bag, and the bright pattern on the wrapper reflected a glimmer of light. He stretched out his hand and opened the seal of a bag of noodles. The rustling sound of the noodles rubbing gently, accompanied by the hissing and low-headed flaming water injected into the hot water, the fragrance was rising vigorously, and the breath of peppers and seaweed mingled, stimulating his sniff. He took a deep breath greedily, and a warm feeling surged in his chest, which also brought a sense of anxiety. I thought to myself, this is just hearing, who cares? His voice was so low that it almost melted into the air. Wow, the fragrance of this pasta is so intimidating. Just let me hear it, nothing will happen. As soon as the voice fell, a sudden sensation of squirting over his body, and his body scattered like a thin fog, and his figure suddenly appeared under the light. The shopkeeper was standing behind the counter, his eyes unintentionally swept towards the monitor, and the blurry human figure on the screen made him froze. The hornet exploded violently, harsh and rapid, like a warning sign. Lin Xiaoming's heart was beating violently. He instinctively ducked and hit the shelf. The banging sounded back into the narrow space. The bread fell all over the ground, crackling like scattered firecrackers. He grabbed a pack of noodles, and the Emperor rushed towards the door. His heart was like a whirlpool, and he couldn't get enough time to sort out his thoughts. Escaped from the shop, he turned into a nearby alley and curled down against the cold wall. The alley was dark, and only the glimmer of the street lights cast a thin shadow. The night wind whispered around the ears, bringing a damp breath. He tried to breathe calmly, and heard passers-by's controversy sounds from the street corners, buzzing and humming like a swarm of bees flying. The two neighbors walked past the alley, and their steps were clearly visible. One of them was loud and anxious. Did you hear it? Another invisible pervert was gone. How is this city so strange? Another responded, with a lingering terror and excitement in his language. Yes, I see the news that the government is going to investigate. Maybe some supernatural organization is doing it, so we have to be careful. Lin Xiaoming bit his teeth tightly, and these words drew into his heart like thorns. He leaned against the wall and sat down, his fingertips trembling slightly. The scene just now replayed in the brain, and the fragrance of the noodles was still left in the nose, which was already bitter. He murmured, "Oh no, I'm screwed up again. Why do I always use my ability to do these trivial things? What will the neighbors look at me now?" The sound was as delicate as a whisper, and the fire hidden in my chest was extinguished, replaced by sideless guilt. He raised his head to the street, the screen of the TV store window flashed in the light, the voices of the news supervisors came clearly, discussing similar events, and the blurred figures in the picture made him recognize himself. The squeaking noise accompanied by the report, the car flowing in the background like a low chord, adding to his tightness. He closed his eyes and tried to calm the world for a moment. The obscurity state flashes unsteadily on the body, like an injured movement, reminding him of the duality of his ability. I thought to myself, I thought this was freedom, but in the end I turned myself into a monster. I should die invisible, how should I take the scene? The loneliness of the alley covers him, the night is coming like a wave, and the lights are jumping far away, suggesting the coming storm. He stood up and walked along the shadows, his steps heavy, and each step seemed to be doubtful about the future. The hustle and bustle of the city continued to be endless, but it became far away in his ears, like a dream that was about to pass. Lin Xiaoming meandered along the shadows of the alley, and the damp air stuck to the skin, like an invisible shackle. He took a few deep breaths, his chest undulated, trying to suppress the rapid breath. The buzzing and low birds of the street lights were like cylindrical whirls around his ears, and the blurred sounds of passers-by flocked from the corners of the street, making him unable to help but hold the corners of his clothes tightly, and his fingertips conveyed the roughness of the fabric. Turning over a corner, he glanced at the back door of the girls' gym, and the iron column beside the door was flashing in the night. He hesitated for a moment, pushed open the door lightly, creaking and squeaking to break the silence, like a slight warning. The sound of the fitness equipment being transmitted from the inside is low and clear, accompanied by the girls' smiles, which is like a lively gathering. He slipped in with his hands and feet, his figure blended into the darkness around him, and his heartbeat reverberated in his chest, gradually emitting other sounds. The energy of the body awakened again in his body. He closed his eyes and felt a slight feeling spreading from his fingertips. The body gradually becomes transparent, like a smoke melting into the air. The crackling sound of high heels on the floor was heard, and every step seemed to be knocking on the heart. The gurgling flow of shower water was flowing everywhere, carrying the warm smell of water vapor. He slowly walked through the dressing area, avoiding the benches and lenses he had, and the pungent smell of sweat was dripping from his nose, mixed with a faint smell of perfume and rubber mat. In front, a group of girls surrounded the rest area, and the conversation rose and fell. He bit his teeth tightly, decided to open his mouth to clarify, and found that his throat was tight. When he reached his mouth, he took a deep breath and tried to calm his voice. "I just wanted to explain, I'm not a pervert." As soon as the voice came out, a blurred flash burst out from his body, and his bodywork dissipated like a shocked wild beast. His figure suddenly appeared, accompanied by the screams of the girls around him stormed in the air. The chaos is coming like a tide. A girl screamed, "Ah! There is a ghost! Call the police, this is that invisible pervert." Her voice was filled with panic, causing a panic to run away. Another girl pointed at him angrily, "Your change. Why are you in shape again? We want to tell the media, you're done." The verbal tuning was filled with anger and fear. They scattered around, knocking over nearby calves, and the sound of metal hitting the floor was rumbling, accompanied by the low calves that were shaking the floor. Lin Xiaoming panicked and tried to calm the scene, but accidentally ran into the man beside him. The man suddenly let out a loud fart, and the smell came like a fog rolling, accompanied by a short whisper. He was swept up by an invisible force and hit the ceiling, causing a tingling pain in his bones. The water bottle fell to the ground, and the sound of the roar fell like rain. Scattered laughter burst out from the crowd, and the police slinging with high-scoring bells were shouting. The scene was absurd, and suddenly he fell back to the ground, slipped in sweat, and the slippery sound returned to his ears. The mysterious man laughed, his voice rumbling indifferently. Ha, my flying trick is not wrong? Brother, you come and try it too, and you may be able to escape faster. His words were light and fast, as if everything was just a game. Lin Xiaoming got up, his clothes were covered in moistness on his skin, and his heart was like a whirlpool. He gasped and said to himself, "No, I have to stop. I can't waste my money like this anymore. I really have to change this time." The words were filled with self-responsible trembling, and the sirens from the far away were getting closer and closer. The background music of the live news broadcast came from outside, like the city's low words. He rushed towards the door, stumbled on the empty floor, and the door slammed and closed, and the night breeze blew over, bringing a cold touch. Passers-by pointed at the words of the points and flew around the streets like bees. He ran along the horse road, and the sound of his shoes hitting the ground was rumbling in the night. The inner self-doubt gradually emerges, like a group of shadows that are chasing them unwillingly. Finally, he hid in another dark alley panting and sat down slid against the cold wall. The mysterious man descended from the sky and landed nowhere with a farting cry. Lin Xiaoming raised his head suspiciously, and the glimmer of the street light cast a thin shadow. He looked at the man, his eyes flashing with an indeterminate flash. The silence of the alley covers everything, leaving only the night wind, suggesting the coming storm. Lin Xiaoming sat against the cold alley wall, his chest undulating like waves, and the night wind blew from the corner of the street, carrying a humid chill. He raised his head and his eyes closed. The mysterious man landed in the air, accompanied by a strange cry, like an invisible air tore through the night. The glimmer of street lights casts broken shadows on the ground, making everything blurry and tight. When the mysterious man landed, a puff sound burst out, and a stinky smell like sulfur quickly spread out from the air, making people miserable eyebrows. Lin Xiaoming instinctively covered his nose, and a light hum appeared in his throat. He stared at the other party with big eyes, his fingers knocked on the wall without any intention, making a shattered sound, as if trying to suppress the waves in his heart. "Hey, brother, don't be so tight." The mysterious man patted his clothes, stood up straight, and a playful curl appeared on the corner of his mouth. His voice was light and fast, as if he was sharing a secret. "Lin Xiaoming, your obsession is so interesting. We are missing people like you. Let's do some tricks together, and don't be alone anymore." I flew to heaven by farting myself, and finally found a like-minded partner. Lin Xiaoming stood up and accidentally hit the trash can beside him, and a sound of flashing in the narrow alley. He took a step back in embarrassment, his body began to flicker, and a slight rush climbed from his fingertips, and the humming low voice of his body quietly rose, making him translucent. The night wind blew over, taking away some smell, leaving behind his inner sarcasm. I am just a social animal, and my body is always out of control. What should I do if I am embarrassed and appear again and again? However, I may have more fun when I join. I originally loved fantasy, but I was afraid of being troubled. Alas, this ability seems to only make me more distracted." His words continued, and the sounds echoed in the alleys, accompanied by the low roar of the far-flung car. The mysterious man smiled and stretched out his hand, facing his palm up, as if inviting an old friend. "Come on, leave this ghost place first." The two of them walked out along the alley, and the buzzing sound of street lights and the hurrying sounds of passers-by formed the city's low language. Lin Xiaoming followed him and stepped into a creaking door with an underground bar inside. As the door opened, the deep jazz music came over, mixed with the sound of the clashing cups and the sound of beer pouring in, and the bitter taste of the wine was scattered in the air. In the bar, light and shadow were interspersed, and a group of people sat around the bar, laughter rising and falling. The mysterious man walked towards Lin Xiaoming. "Everyone, this is Lin Xiaoming. He has a hidden body and just joins our team." The group members turned over and looked at him, and someone raised his glass and shouted. Lin Xiaoming tried to integrate the picture, and felt his body move slightly, and his body was intermittently ineffective. His shadow flashed under the light, causing a giggling smile. "I heard that the government has begun to investigate our weird abilities. We have to be careful and use these moves to make more money, so as not to hide every day like Lin Xiaoming. The organization member has said, pouring wine, and the sound was filled with jazz rhythms, and there was a sense of vigilance in his language. Lin Xiaoming heard it, his heartbeat couldn't help but speed up. He grabbed the cup and unconsciously made his fingers transparent. The organization member patted his shoulder. Lin Xiaoming, come and try your hidden art to steal something. If we succeed, we will be happy. I can stop yawning for 5 seconds, just to cover you up. This is an opportunity to show a little confidence and not be a waste superpower. His words were like a light knocking on Lin Xiaoming's chest. Lin Xiaoming gritted his teeth. Okay, I'll try it, but if you lose control, don't laugh at me. I'm very conflicted and want to be brave, but I always retreat. This ability was originally a hero, but it ended up falling to the point of stealing beer. In the air, the notes of jazz are drawn and a member yawns a big yawn. In an instant, time seemed to freeze, the bar became silent, leaving only Lin Xiaoming's breathing sound in his ears. He took a deep breath and activated his bodywork. His body completely merged into the darkness around him, moving towards a bottle of beer at the bar. The rustling friction sounded slightly, which was the energy moving like a shaped clothing, but the deep inner twig was like a whirlwind. The moment he reached out, his body lost control, and his figure suddenly appeared, accompanied by a shock and the sound of the falling cup. The chaos is like a tide. The music suddenly became loud, screaming and laughing, the beer moistened the floor, and the damp breath spread in the air. Lin Xiaoming accidentally knocked over the table, and the cup was shattered. The group members scattered, swaying and thumping on the wooden floor. Oh no, it's coming again, he murmured, trying to calm his body, and the flash buzzing sound of the body-hiding body hit sound rose again. The party was upgraded to a drama at this moment. Some people escaped with a smile, some people continued to hold the cup, and the jazz in the background became wilder. Lin Xiaoming curled up in the corner, gasping weakly, and the sharp sirens from afar were clamoring, as if a shaped threat was approaching. His eyes flashed under the light, his translucent body reflected the inner tide, and the shadows outside the street lights quietly expanded, implying that another storm was coming. Lin Xiaoming curled up in the dark corner of the underground bar, his body was like a group of ambiguous smoke, and his body moved slightly, becoming sensible in the tightness. The wild jazz rhymes gushed from the bar, like an invisible whip whipping the air, and the sound of the sirens from the far away was as deep as a hidden wilderness. He took a deep breath, his chest undulated, trying to suppress the familiar panic, feeling his fingers tremble slightly, and the moist beer on the floor stuck to his palms. Suddenly, the door at the entrance of the bar opened wide, and a group of government investigators rushed in like a tide. Their boots stepped on the wooden floor, making a heavy and rapid impact sound, and the light beam of the flashlight swept through the chaotic scene like a searchlight, illuminating the moisture marks that the beer was ripped off. Screams came one after another, and the jazz melody kept twisting, as if it was torn to pieces by an invisible force. The person who was in charge of the investigation officer raised the certificate and shouted loudly, "Everyone is calm. We are the government investigation team and are pursuing spiritual incidents. If you see suspicious people, you will report the case, otherwise we will check it one by one." His words were determined and authoritative, with a hurricane, as if suppressing the impatientness in his heart. Lin Xiaoming's heart beat violently. He instinctively shrank his body, and his body movement began to move unsteadily, like a thin curtain of time. He clenched his teeth and tried to crawl behind the bar, the groan of beer on the floor accompanied by his breathing, mixing the smile of the background and the crispness of the collision of the glass. Just as he moved, he accidentally kicked over a beer bottle, which fell to the ground, making a crisp sound of jingling in the narrow space. His inner curse was too reckless and he hurriedly activated his body-hiding technique, but because of the sudden tightness, his body was semi-shaped, and his silhouette seemed to be hidden under the light. In the crowd, a group member slipped away quietly, his footsteps were rapid and light, like a cat walking in the night. Lin Xiaoming accidentally caught this scene, his eyes flashed and decided to keep up. He moved along the narrow corridor, the echoes of the corridor amplified his heartbeat, and the sirens from the far away were like a hum, reminding the approaching danger. The jazz rhyme faded away, leaving only the damp air and the bitter taste of beer lingering on the tip of the nose. The chase begins here. Lin Xiaoming used his insidious exercise to finish the picture, and hit a beer barrel while turning the corner. The barrel overturned, and a rumbling sound made the air around it shook slightly. The investigators' wireless device burst into sizzling interference, and their attention turned here in an instant. "It's here," someone shouted. Lin Xiaoming accelerated his running in panic. His shoes creaked funnily on the wet floor. He felt a brutal force swelling in his chest, as if every step might cause everything to collapse. The ghost discovered Lin Xiaoming's tracking and smiled. "Ha, you, a waste superpower, still want to be a hero? Be careful, I know some big names, can you catch up with me?" His words were like a sharp knife, breaking the air and mocking her with a quick and mocking look. Lin Xiaoming gasped, and his heart was filled with tumult. He murmured, "Oh my God, I just want to secretly listen to gossip, why did you get into this again?" "No, I have to escape, or my obsession will be out again." But the voice fell, and a sense of determination surged from his body. He turned to the initiative and decided to launch an attack on the ghost. The ghost released a superpower manual that was worn out. It fell to the ground, and it sounded crisp and crisp. When Lin Xiaoming started to lift up, his body surgery completely failed because of the awkward emotion. He appeared in a wolf-like shape, and the jazz music in the background turned into the climax part, and the notes were stormed like a tide. The man who was inquiring about the head caught up and pointed at him and shouted, "You! It's the invisible pervert in the genre, right? Soon, how many superpowers do you know in side stories?" His words were full of suspicion, as if he was trying to explore a potential line. Lin Xiaoming gritted his teeth and stood firm, his chest undulating and swaying. He shouted, "Wait, what are you saying? Don't run away. I, Lin Xiaoming, are not afraid of trouble today. In order not to make the world more ridiculous, I have to figure it out." There was a new force in my words, as if the hidden body was no longer a burden, but a weapon in his hand. He pretended to use his body hide to scare the ghost, and his body became silly and felt awkward. He slipped on the beer, and his wrestling sounds and his accents were rumbling in the corridor. In a mess, the ghost inside tried to escape, and the two wrestled into a group, and the rustling sound of clothes rubbing against each other. The scene turned to the back door of the bar, and the air there was darker, and the damp touch was like a layer of film covering the skin. Lin Xiaoming grabbed the ghost, and the ghost gasped and said, "What do you think you can change? It's just a hiding social animal." But Lin Xiaoming did not retreat. He used his implicit surgery to distort the light and shadow and block the other party, and finally let the investigators arrive. The investigators' pace is getting closer and closer, and the wireless commands are whispering. The moment the ghost was subdued, the laughter and the siren's intercourse formed a disgraceful exchange. Lin Xiaoming stood on the scene gasping, holding the vulgar handbook tightly in his hand. His obsession gradually stabilized, and his body no longer moved, as if he had finally found a balance. The far away, Morse siren's call and a mysterious lowly verb seemed to indicate that a greater storm was coming. The shadow of the bar quietly expanded, his heartbeat swelled, with a strange premonition. Lin Xiaoming held the superpower handbook tightly, leaning against the cold wall behind the underground bar. The bitter breath of beer was filled with the air, like a layer of sticky film stuck to the skin. He took a few deep breaths, tried to keep his body and his body stable, and felt an unstable sensation in the harsh sirens. Far away, the engine's roar was getting closer and closer, approaching the dark nest like a wild beast's roar. Suddenly, a rapid sound of footsteps came from the corridor, as if the tide was slapped on the stone bank. Lin Xiaoming instinctively flashed aside, and the handbook in his hand slid down a little. He accidentally knocked over a pile of empty wine bottles, and the glass containers rolled on the wooden floor, making a crisp sound like a string of inappropriate bells. The group members scattered in an instant, screaming in the narrow space, mixing the moisture odor of the beer, making the whole scene even more chaotic. He bit his teeth and activated the hidden body. His figure twisted slightly under the light, like a layer of water waves swaying. Lin Xiaoming moved quickly, and his target was locked on his friend Xiaoli. Xiaoli was curled up on the edge of the bar, with a look of panic on his face. His hand accidentally wiped Xiaoli's shoulders. At the moment when he was about to touch, Xiaoli's ability to fart was touched. A puff sound burst out, as sudden as a ball of air. Xiaoli's body suddenly shot upwards, hitting the metal hanging lamp on the ceiling, and the sound of ding fell like rain, bringing a pungent smell, as if the rotten fruit had actually dissipated in the air. The scene is absurd. Investigators were hit by this sudden airflow, their coughs came one after another, and the wireless device blew, like a silence in the remote verbal interference. Lin Xiaoming stretched out his hand to pull Xiaoli back, but found that his obsession was in a tight situation. His figure appeared translucently, and a silhouette was revealed in the dim light, accompanied by the drama of his chest. At this moment, another member, Lao Wang, yawned, and the sound grew into a resounding resonance. Time suddenly stopped. Lao Wang's yawn was like an invisible wire, pulling everything around him. The sound of dripping water extends from the ceiling, making it full of resonance, as if every drop of water drags its invisible tail. Lin Xiaoming clumsily avoided in the air at this time of suspension. His movements became slow and difficult. His bodywork was like a swaying smoke that might dissipate at any time. He glanced at the investigators who were frozen in place. The flashlight beam was trapped in mid-air, like a quiet painting. The battle continues. Lin Xiaoming used his implicit surgery to push a close investigator, and the rustling sound of clothes rubbing lightly broke the silence. While protecting his friend, he accidentally slipped on the damp floor, shaking the air around him with a bang. This locking reaction reactivated Xiaoli's farting ability, and a sound of voice passed by, bringing more odor to spread. The investigators' coughs became more and more connected, as if an invisible battle was unfolding around them. Lin Xiaoming seized the opportunity and pulled Lao Wang and Xiaoli away from his obscene state. They fled along the underground passage, their feet roaring in the narrow space, like a rhythm of heartbeat hitting the wall. The ticking of water droplets from the top tribe emphasized the urgency of escape. A damp breath covered them, and a cold sweaty touch appeared on their skin. Finally, they hid in a small room, and the door slammed, leaving only Lin Xiaoming's heartbeat, like a drumming far away, calming down. The air in the room calmed down slightly. Old Wang opened his mouth first, carrying a humorous smile. "Haha, time stops is not something you can do, Lin Xiaoming. If you don't wake up, we will all be in the supervision." His words were light and quick, with a reminder hidden, like a wind blowing across the leaves. Lin Xiaoming leaned against the wall, his chest undulating. He slammed himself. "I wanted to be a hero, but I messed up every time. But this time, I can't hide anymore. I have to protect you, otherwise my obsession will be the only way to steal the noodles." His voice was filled with determination, and his words were filled with self-deprecation. Xiaoli wiped the sweat from the bottom of his head and looked at him gratefully. "Boss, your obsession is too fierce. But don't let me fart and fly next time, I'm about to vomit." "Thank you, I'll let me see that you will not only listen to gossip." He was breathing in his words, his eyes flashing with a silk of trust. Lao Wang patted Lin Xiaoming on the shoulder. "Do you know that your story may change more? Don't waste it." Lin Xiaoming was silent for a moment, and the momentary confusion flashed through the sea of brain. He straightened his body and clenched his fists. "You're right, I used to be too dispersed. From now on, I'll use this obsession to do some serious things. Although I feel like I'm embarrassed every time, at least I have to try it." As he finished speaking, the air in the room seemed to be slightly shaken, and the light of obsession flashed at my fingertips, like a premonition glimmer. Outside, the sirens gradually faded away, leaving only the breathing of friends in the dark. Lin Xiaoming patted Xiaoli on the back, causing an awkward smile. This small room seemed to have become their temporary shelter, and it also predicted that a greater storm was coming. The shadow of light flashed on the wall, like the call of the next chapter. Lin Xiaoming leaned against the wet wall in the small room, and his chest was still undulating slightly, as if the escaped wave was slowly receding. Xiaoli and Lao Wang were sitting next to the shaking wooden table. The air in the room was sticky and cold. Water drops dripped from the top, making sporadic ticks, like hidden drums reminding the sirens on the outside that had moved away. Their eyes were in contact, and they were worried. Lao Wang took the lead in breaking the silence and opened a yellow map on the table. His fingers hit the table, and the rhythm of knock was as steady as a heartbeat. "This is the core of the government's ideology," he said, his voice low and full of force. "We have to take advantage of the trouble and go in from the side." Lin Xiaoming pointed at the head, feeling a tightness climbing up his throat. He took a deep breath and tried to wake up the hidden body inside his body. A slight buzzing energy wave swept past him, like an invisible slight wind wiggling the air. His figure twisted slightly, and he accidentally kicked a bunch of empty jars while moving. The metal containers flipped up, and the impact of the slide roared in the narrow space, causing Shaoli to burst into laughter. "Ha, you, the master who is so obsessed, will really challenge the opportunity." Shaoli slapped his thighs, and a piece of detachment was carried in his laughter. His flashlight lighted up, and the yellow beam swept across the room, illuminating Lao Wang's map and reflecting Lin Xiaoming's awkward silhouette. "Brother Xiaoming, don't be nervous," Shaoli continued, his temperament with humorous encouragement. "Don't sneeze and look like you. We rely on my fart flying to create big troubles, so that those officials can't get rid of the farts. I don't want to be caught as a test product again." Lin Xiaoming rubbed his nose and smiled vigorously. "I, the most powerful superpower in history, want to prove today that I am not a slander who only listens gossip," he said, murmuring and decisive in the voice. "I want to protect everyone with my obsession, and don't let the government ruin our free life." As soon as the voice fell, he couldn't help but sneeze. "Ah!" The voice replied in the room, and his figure instantly became clear from blur, accompanied by a panic flow. A musty smell came from the damp air, making the scene even more ridiculous. Lao Wang smiled, and a deep warmth flashed in his eyes. "Xiaoming, you have become our savior from a fantasy community," he said, his fingers stopping on the map. "No matter how strong my yawn is, you need to invisibly attack the enemy. To resolve this crisis together, we will be normal in the future and no longer be a fugitive from the underground group." His words were like a stimulant, making Lin Xiaoming straighten up and clench his fists. The lights in the room sweep, casting a long shadow, as if presuming the upcoming chaos. They didn't hesitate much and pushed the door out. Lin Xiaoming activated the body-hidden art, and his figure turned into a vague silhouette, and his footsteps became as soft as a rustling friction sound. He was ahead, and Shaoli followed, and his fart-flying body accompanied by the sound of puff-puff, creating a stream of air, spreading out in the air like a group of invisible smoke. Lao Wang yawned behind him, and the long sound pulled for a while. After 5 seconds of calmness, the surrounding steps stopped abruptly. They passed the patrol team and their movements became unusually slow in this suspended world. The air seemed to solidify, and only the tick sound of the water droplets could be heard vaguely. The entrance to the government base is hidden in shadows, and the air is filled with metal and oily smells. Lin Xiaoming invisibly penetrated, knocking down a row of boxes, and the bang-bang collision sounded in the corridor, attracting the police of the soldiers. His emotions became tight, and his figure accidentally appeared. A panic made him hiding tightly, and the hoo-hoo voice accompanied his movement. He gritted his teeth and held his body in a stable manner, secretly approaching the device, and felt the buzzing energy at his fingertips activate. Shaoli slams props from the air, and the hissing sound tore the darkness. Lao Wang's time stopped intervening again, leaving the enemy's movements trapped in mid-air. The battle reached orgasm. Lin Xiaoming plucked up his courage, his emotions gradually became stable, and he maintained his obsession. He found the plug of the device and unplugged it. The sizzling current stopped and sounded to the base, and the light dimmed instantly. Shaoli's puff fart sound turned into a smoke fog, and in a mess, the soldiers mistakenly thought it was a ghost, and the crunch sound of the door came from the door that Lin Xiaoming accidentally bumped into, making them scream. Lao Wang took the opportunity to stop the time and let Lin Xiaoming escape. During the process, a hee-hee laughter slipped out from Lin Xiaoming's throat and accidentally exposed his position, but he quickly adjusted and continued to move forward. At the moment when the crisis was resolved, Lin Xiaoming slipped on the damp floor and fell back with a bang. His friends pulled him up and ran and laughed, with the sound of shock sirens falling away in the background. They returned to the small room, leaning against the wall panting, sweat mixed with dampness, slipping over their skin. Lin Xiaoming looked at them. "Yes, I won't run away again," he said, his voice firmly. "Even if emotions make me appear, I will use this ridiculous ability to protect our new friendship." Xiaoli wiped the head, his eyes flickered and grateful. "Boss, your obsession is too fierce," he gasped. "Next time we come again, I promise not to vomit." Old Wang patted Lin Xiaoming's shoulder and smiled warmly. "We did it," he said lightly. "This is just the beginning." The air in the room calmed down, leaving only the tick sound of water droplets as a companion. Lin Xiaoming felt that the obsessive surgery was slightly flashing on his fingertips, and a slight and shadow danced on the wall, indicating an uncertainty in the future. Outside, the night view of the city opened like ink, and their laughter gradually dissipated in the darkness, leaving behind a silence full of hope. Lin Xiaoming leaned against the damp wall, and the waves of his body-hiding movements flashed slightly on his fingertips, like an uncertain light. The air inside the room is still sticky, and the night view of the city is filled with blurred lights from outside the window, which is a bit of exhausting calm. He took a deep breath, his chest fluctuated and down, his eyes swept past Xiaoli and Lao Wang. Their smiles had long dissipated, leaving only the tacit understanding between them. He slowly stood up and wiped the sweat from the head. The scattered touch made him slightly browse. The horns in the room were buzzing slightly, accompanied by his every step. The floor creaked lightly under his feet, as if responding to the transformation in his heart. Lin Xiaoming walked to the center of the room and took a few deep breaths. Every breath was filled with a damp, musty smell. His fingers were shaking slightly, and there was a sense of determination. Xiaoli took out a navy paper towel from his pocket and wiped his own size. His movements were light and fast, accompanied by the rustling sound of the paper towel. Lao Wang was slightly lit up, and his eyes flashed with a warm look. They exchanged one look, and the soundless communication seemed to have brought the distance closer. Lao Wang raised his hand and patted Lin Xiaoming on the shoulder. The sound of the slap was soft and powerful, like an invisible affirmation. The musty smell in the room was gradually diffused by their smiles, and there seemed to be a little more lively in the air. "Brothers," Lin Xiaoming opened his mouth, his voice low and full of determination. "I swear, I will not escape with my own obsession. From now on, I will use this ability to do some serious things, protect our friendship, and no longer let those absurd misunderstandings harm you." His words were like a warm current, accompanied by the ticking of water droplets in the room, flowing slowly. He clenched his fists tightly, his fingertips came to a slight buzzing bird that was obsessed with his body. The strange vibration made him laugh involuntarily. Xiaoli grinned, and his expression of gratitude was hidden in the navy at the corner of his eyes. "Xiaoming, you finally wake up," he said, his spirit was lively and with a light feeling of distraction. "Together, we will deal with those urban monsters, and stop being the worst superpower in history. This action will let me see your potential." His words were like a light wind, brushing through the room, and the coldness was dissipated. Lao Wang laughed loudly, his voice was filled with humor. "Ha, Xiaoming, it sounds good," he talked, his eyes flashing to affirm Lin Xiaoming's growth, "but if you can't help but secretly listen to gossip, I don't guarantee that you will not treat you as a ghost. At least, our friendship will not disappear because of your obsession, right?" His words resounded in the air, like a light rhythm, which made Lin Xiaoming unable to help but slam his palm. The laughter sounded in the room, mixed with the whistling sound of the fan. Lao Wang stood up and turned on the old fan. The leaves swayed slowly, bringing a damp air, which also made the air circulate slightly. They sat down and formed a small circle, and Lao Wang began to talk about the points of urban news. "Have you heard the invisible pervert joke?" he said, his words were slow and sarcastic. "It was said that a guy used a hidden body to peek at it, but he turned out to be invisible, which scared everyone to think he was seeing a ghost. His story was like a slight wind, and when they brushed their smiles, Lin Xiaoming couldn't help but lower his head and smiled slightly, and his shoulders trembled slightly. In this relaxing atmosphere, Lin Xiaoming tried to activate the hidden art. He focused, his body gradually became transparent, and the familiar buzzing sound spread like a shaped wave. The ticking of water droplets in the room intersects with the noise of the car flow in the remote city, highlighting the absurdity of this ability. He smiled awkwardly, but because of the storm of emotion, his figure flashed for a moment. Li Xiao was shocked and his eyes widened. "Oh, what's wrong with you?" His voice was shocked and quickly turned into a smile. Lin Xiaoming breathed firmly and tried hard to maintain that fragile and transparent state. His heartbeat was as rapid as a drum, and the energy from his fingertips slightly moved. He slammed himself. "Don't worry, I will work hard. But, once I flashed again, don't laugh at me. Let us continue this ridiculous adventure." As the voice fell, he glanced at the lights in the neighborhood outside the window. The blurry lights were like flames in the night, confusing his curiosity. While the three of them were about to finish the conversation, Lin Xiaoming quietly stood up. The hidden surgery started again, accompanied by a faint flash of sound. He leaned his hand and approached the window. The floor scratched lightly, making a slight sound, as if protesting against his little movements. Outside the window, the chattering and chatting in the neighborhood came, mixing with the hustle and bustle of the city. Lin Xiaoming's translucent figure stood close to the window, and his ears were slightly heard. The familiar gossip made his mouth sneer, and he also forgot the quiet surroundings. Suddenly, a burst of laughter popped out of his throat, breaking the room's safety. His figure was completely in shape, accompanied by a big sneeze. "Ah, snee!" The sound was fluttering in the air, and the damp musty smell seemed to be even more heavy. He stood by the window in embarrassment and apologized for his hands outside the window. The lights in the neighborhood flashed, as if responding to his failure. Xiaoli and Lao Wang burst into laughter behind him. Xiaoli slapped his thighs and laughter poured out like a spring. "Ha, Xiaoming, your move will always be our highlight." Lao Wang shook his head, his eyes filled with warmth. "It seems that our adventure is not over yet." The picture became blurry, and the city lights flashed outside the window, indicating that more inaccurate storms were coming soon. In the room, there were only the ticking sound of water droplets, which was lightly resounding in their laughter.